Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast, where all accountants come to learn all the ways to grow your firm. And when you're in doubt, I am here to help you out. So if you're ready to learn and ready to grow your firm, then you're in the right place to sharpen your skills and increase your revenue. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Today on the Abundant Accountant Podcast, we have a very special guest. Our special guest is the president and founder of the American Institute of Certified Tax Planners. With over 15 years of experience as a certified public accountant, our special guest has worked with many top business owners and investors using proactive tax planning to help them keep more of what they earn. Our special guest is a keynote speaker, teacher, best-selling author, and a mentor to tax professionals across the U.S. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I'm eager to discover more about those of you who listen on the 1st and the 15th of every month. And how can you do this? I'd like to just take a moment to extend an invitation to subscribe and leave a written review so I can keep on delivering the content you want and love. Before you subscribe and leave a written review, I just want to say thank you for helping me continue to deliver the content that you love. And with that said, as many of you know, sharing is caring. And I want to make sure that you take a screenshot of today's episode on your phone. And at the end, when you're finished listening to it, tag me, Michelle Weinstein, and our incredible guest for today, Dominique Molina, and post it on your LinkedIn feed and hashtag the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Share with us, what is the biggest takeaway you had from today's episode? What was one aha moment that you had today? And make sure to take a screenshot, post it on your LinkedIn feed. Make sure to tag myself, Michelle Weinstein, and Dominique Molina, and hashtag the Abundant Accountant Podcast. And we will make sure to share it on all of our social platforms. Now, let's welcome Dominique to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. This is well overdue for sure. And can you just share with everyone, all the accountants listening, what is it that you created for all CPAs, enrolled agents, and tax attorneys across the country?
Well, the simple answer, Michelle, is a much better life. A much better work-life style. Premium fees, working less hours, less deadlines, less stress, less pressure, which I know seems hard to believe,
yes.
Especially at this time of year, because everybody's pulling their hair out with deadlines and things of that sort. And so we're going to be talking today about a really important topic, and that's sort of my specialty, is how do you get people to pay you a lot more so that you can afford to work with less clients, you have a much more scalable model if that's your choice, and you have a much better life. So what's not to love? It's the perfect day to talk about it.
It is the perfect day to talk about it because today is just all full of love. And, I've personally heard this question. We're maybe going up on 1,000 times now of how do I choose my pricing model, right? And I completely get it, right? Because I've talked to a lot of you who are listening, and how you charge for your expertise is one of the most important decisions you will make as an accountant, enrolled agent, bookkeeper, like whatever you're doing in this field. This is the most important question, or the most important thing you should have figured out. And Dominique is definitely the person to have answer all these questions. So in this episode today, we are going to explain the different pricing models and which pricing model would work best for accountants and your firms, and also how to get the prices that will stick, right? And that's really what we're going to be discussing today. So grab a pen and paper, pay really good attention, because you're not going to want to miss any of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said a couple of key things in there, Michelle. One is, having pricing for your expertise or getting paid for your expertise. So that's a big one, is what are you actually getting paid for?
Yes.
And then the second one is, this is the most important thing that you should have hopefully figured out by now. But I got to tell you, if you haven't, you're not alone, because most people kind of adopt pricing standards from somewhere. And whether you're in business and you're just starting or you've been in business 40 plus years, it is possible to change your pricing model. So stay tuned, because we've got a lot of great information for you today.
All right. Well, Dominique, I think the first thing we want to tackle is hourly pricing, right? So what are the key things that every accountant listening should know about, hourly pricing? Is it a good option, especially products that have deliverables? Share with us all of your knowledge on hourly pricing.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to, what are you actually getting paid for? Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, when I started my own CPA practice, I really didn't stop to think about that question. I think it was more in my subconscious that, oh yeah, of course I get paid for what I do. Right. And so in the hourly billing model, this is especially important, because if you're choosing to use the hourly billing model, what you're saying and communicating to everyone is that you're getting paid for your time. Now, what you do with that time is sort of a mystery. And oftentimes, the clients have no idea, and they're looking at the bill and going, how did it take you that long? It shouldn't take that long. Or why are you charging me for research? You should know all this stuff already. Right. And so in that model, you are getting paid for your time. Of course, a big downfall to that is that time's limited. We only have 24 hours in a day.
Very true.
And even if you're scaling and you have other people working for you, they only have 24 hours in a day. So time is very difficult to leverage unless somehow you're producing something in that time that you can use multiple places.
Can you give us an example of that, Dominique? So if someone is, stuck on the hourly model, they're not really wanting to change or try something new, can you give us an example of what you mean by doing something where you can use it in multiple places?
Sure. So let's say I have a good friend of mine that's in Central Florida, and she developed what she calls handy handouts. And these handy handouts explain a lot of frequently asked questions that she was getting by new business owners that were coming in and saying, what kind of entity should I be? And do I need a business license? And who do I call for this? And who do I call for that? And so what she did is she spent some time creating this resource, and she's been able to sell it over and over again for $1,000. Now, in that story that I just shared, she's not using an hourly billing model. If she were, she would get paid for the 4 or 5 hours that it took her to put that together, yet she's been able to charge for the product in a way that she gets paid over and over again for that same work that she's doing for multiple clients in that same hour. So let's say that she was doing that for 5 people. She could charge those 5 people for that same 4 or 5 hours of time, but she's able to leverage that at the same time.
Right. So like a 5-for-1 special.
Yes. But I have to say, how often does that actually come up in our world, right? We're doing customized work. I don't know about anybody else listening, but very infrequently do I ever do a tax return that's identical for anybody else. True. Or accounting or bookkeeping or payroll or whatever it is. Most of the time in this industry, it's very difficult to do that and leverage that same hour for multiple people.
Yes, but it's a good idea if someone is stuck on staying in the hourly model. How can you do something once and duplicate it or do it times 5? I don't know the word for that, but I'm sure there's a five-plicate it option.
I think it's quintuple.
Quintuple. If you quintuple it. Okay. So what about another pricing model like project-based pricing?
Sure. And I think this is where things sometimes get confusing, because the term that we use in the industry is flat fee pricing. And it's exactly as you've described, Michelle. It's project based, meaning somebody needs a project done, whether it's an audit, or maybe it's a compilation or a review or a tax return that includes these forms, or even a monthly bookkeeping service. And you're assigning a price for all of that work and what's included in doing that.
Yep.
Now, some people say that when they're flat pricing, they're interchanging that term with value pricing. And it can be value pricing, but here's how you can tell if your flat fee pricing model is value or something else.
Okay.
Because it all comes down to what is underlying the price. What I know a lot of firms do is they will quote a flat fee, but it's based on an estimate of the hours it's going to take to complete that job. Same thing in the tax return world. If I know that it takes me roughly an hour to do a Schedule A and an hour to do a Schedule E, and 15 minutes per trade on a Schedule D, and of course I'm just getting this all muddled up, but then I'm still, even though I'm quoting one fee for the whole project, I'm still using an hourly billing model. Now, if I base the price on something else, such as the value that's created from that project, it is a combination of a flat fee model and a value billing model. So you can still all come back to hourly billing, even though you may be just giving one price, if it's based on the number of hours it's going to take you or what you estimate.
Yep. So from what we've shared so far on pricing models, what would you say are the pros and the cons for anyone who's considering, I need to make a change? What I'm doing right now isn't working, and I want what you were saying earlier. I want to make some more money. I want to work a little bit less and have more time for some fun.
Yeah, I think it's important to know all your options. So we've talked about 2 different pricing models, but there's really 3 others as well that kind of exist in the industry.
What about retainer pricing?
So retainer pricing is, again, you still have to understand what is the underlying concept that it's based on. So again, if it's based on an estimate of the number of hours, then you're actually using hourly billing. Now, some people can price based on costs. And so in that case, what they're doing is they're estimating how much it's going to cost them for a project or an engagement to completion. And then they're hopefully doing some sort of markup on those costs. So if I know that I'm paying my bookkeeper $25 an hour, I might bill my bookkeeper out for $50 an hour. And so that's a combination of hourly billing and pricing based on costs. Some people in the industry, believe it or not, give it away for free. And that certainly can be a viable model, believe it or not.
Right.
It's called the loss leader, right? We see this everywhere in industry. We see Twitter. Twitter's a free model, right? You can go on. It doesn't cost you anything. But Twitter makes a boatload of money. How do they make it?
Advertising.
Absolutely. We also see a lot of financial advisors using this model because they want to attract in their ideal type of customer. And one way to do that is deeply discounted or even free accounting or tax services. And so that's another option. And finally, there's pricing based on what you think the market will bear. And sometimes that is either flat fee or even hourly billing. But what you're doing is you're establishing your prices based on what you think your competitors are charging or based on what your response has been from using that price with clients.
Yep. And then there's one other one, which is your favorite.
Yes, my favorite is value pricing.
Yes, value pricing. Let's talk about your favorite and get into the nitty gritty and the meat of things right here.
Yeah, I mean, value pricing, you have to understand, like, what is value to begin with? And value really is about what is it, what kinds of results are you creating? And let's say that your objective is to help somebody increase their profits or improve their take-home pay by helping them budget and cut expenses. Then value pricing might be a really good solution for you as long as you're creating that value. And what you're doing with value pricing is you are capturing a piece of that value and using that as your price. So a lot of times people say, well, then what is value pricing? And value pricing is really, and what is that value question? It's the maximum amount that a customer would pay for anything. Yeah. We can use this in a lot of other different forms, but as far as it goes in the accounting industry, we want to base it on results. What are the outcomes? I got to tell you something. Nobody really cares about their bookkeeping or payroll or tax returns or any of the other number of things that we are amazing at. We know what goes into it. Unfortunately, our clients often don't understand what it takes to get that job done. And so that's where it's difficult then to have an effective hourly pricing model, because people don't understand what it is that we do and how hard it is. And at the same time, it's like, where are you actually getting paid for all the effort that goes into even learning this stuff? An estimate came out from the IRS when tax reform was released on how long it would take people to understand the new laws. And the estimate was 2,000 hours.
Wow.
2,000 hours for a professional to study enough to be able to assist their clients. Where do you actually get paid for those 2,000 hours in an hourly billing model?
Hey, I have an idea though, because don't you teach accountants and CPAs and EAs and tax attorneys how to do that in a less amount of time, not 2,000 hours?
Well, I think the 2,000 hours is kind of irrelevant. It takes however long it takes, right?
Right.
Some people may learn faster. Some people may learn slower. Some people may use resources in education that are better and more effective at helping them learn. But the point is that generally in an hourly billing model, or even in a cost billing model, you're not capturing the real costs that go into that, and that includes things like time and costs for education and all of that stuff. And so if you think about it, what we're able to actually do for people is what they really want after all. Again, I said nobody really wants what we deliver. They do it because they have to. Right. But sometimes we're also creating results based on those deliverables that we produce.
And I think it's like you said, it's like the outcomes, right? It's the outcomes, but I think you said something really key. Not only do they not really care about any of the details, they want to know the outcomes, but I think this is the first time I heard why isn't anyone incorporating the teaching, the schooling you've been through, the master's degree you have, the additional investments you made in your education, and adding that as part of your value-based pricing, right? And I think that's a key element that a lot of people are missing.
Right. It is, because even if it's just counting your on-the-job training, if you've been at this 10, 15 years, you have developed wisdom and knowledge over that 10 or 15 years, and you should be compensated for that.
Based on all of your 20 whatever years of doing this and being the leader of the pack of really sharing and teaching value pricing, I know let's hear all about it, because I know this is the one that you stand for the most.
Yeah, it's again going back to that question you asked at the top of the podcast episode, Michelle, and that is, what are people really buying from you? Right. And in a value pricing model, you're focusing on the fact that the customer's really purchasing value from you. They're not buying hours, and hours really don't relate to the value that you create. It takes however long it takes. So if I'm an accountant and I can take those financial statements that my firm has created and sit down and analyze that with the business owner and help them make decisions that leads to less expense and more money in their pocket, that's value. And we should be paid for that value. So rather than basing it on what the market will bear, or on costs, or giving it away for free, or on the number of hours it takes, we want to focus instead on what results are we helping people create. And that's what really gives you the opportunity to charge a lot more than things like what the market will bear, because we're focusing on something different.
Right. And it's really about like, I know you and I have spoke, like what kinds of results are you bringing to the client, right? And, if you're increasing the amount of money that they're taking home, or you're providing more money in the business to pay the staff more so your staff won't leave you, or, whatever that is, you're basically taking a piece of the value that you're bringing with your knowledge and your expertise.
Right. And that's where you get into the power of leverage. So whether you're looking to build a business that's much more simple, it allows you to cut down the number of clients and maybe work with a handful so that you're not so crazy all the time and
Right.
so juggling so many deadlines. Or if you're really looking to ramp up and scale, this is where you can duplicate this with all of your teammates as well, so that it doesn't really matter how long it takes you, because the number one focus is value. Now, the problem with that is the number one focus is value. So if you don't understand what the value is that you bring to the table, or it's a nebulous idea that's difficult for a client to comprehend what the value is, say, well, I help them sleep at night so they don't have to worry about the IRS come knocking at their door. Well, it's hard to quantify that. Right? So if you're not already offering a service that creates value, guess what? You can. It's not too late. You can look at what services you're offering and what you're really good at and what you most enjoy, and then find a way to make it more valuable to the client. Use the information that you help put together to be meaningful and help them understand how meaningful it is, and help them do something with it that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And it's also, like what you're saying, if people have a hard time understanding, like, Dominique, what are you talking about with this whole value thing? It's really based on what results are you bringing to your client? What is the end results, right? And, what are the outcomes that they will receive? What is in it for your client? What are those results? And I think, like you were saying, the power of leverage. And I really love that. I think in your industry, talking with hundreds of accountants, having the leverage that you have and the knowledge that you have with consumers like me who don't understand a thing that you're talking about, and every person hates the tax stuff, or I know not you, not anyone listening, but literally, like, if you think about the power of the leverage that you have and the knowledge that you have, it's like a brain surgeon. There's not many people that can do the work that you do, and to also believe in that yourself and having that belief of the value that you are worth. You keep listening to Dominique and she'll make sure you understand it. So is there anything else on the value-based pricing model, since I think that's the one you recommend out of all the ones we spoke about today? Is that correct?
Oh yeah. And just because it's the easiest to apply here. And you brought up brain surgeon. I think that's a great example. One thing that brain surgeons do very well that we don't in our industry is they communicate about results. The brain surgeon isn't focusing on how many stitches is he going to put in, how many cuts is he going to make, how much gas are they going to use from the anesthesiologist. And yet we find ourselves as accountants often talking about the inputs. We focus on how long it will take us, what kind of forms we're going to use, how many transactions we had to record or have to record. And people don't really care about that. What they care is, hey, doc, when I get out of this, I'm going to have a new knee. Or, doc, when I get out of this, I'm going to have a new heart and I have a new lease on life. Hey, accountant, I'm going to get that loan that I really need for my business because of the work that you did. And so, yes, you should capture a part of what you're enabling that person to do. And so the most important part is understanding yourself, what it is that's valuable. And then if you aren't currently doing something that's highly considered valuable, change it.
Right. And I mean, this other analogy that you just said, it's like the doctor provides people with a new lease on a body part or a new lease on life, right? For the people that got their life back. You're providing people with opportunities financially that no one else could do. and that a lot of people just aren't equipped to do because you're so busy doing that lower value work at the hourly rate.
Yeah, it's really what's best for your clients as well, because I have to tell you, and I'll just admit, for years and years in my practice, I'm trying to cut as many corners as I can because I'm bursting at the seams with too much work to do and not enough time. And are there things more that I could have looked for? Yes, I did my best to find everything that I could in the time that I had that I was getting paid for. But there's always more that can be done. And so in a value pricing model, it takes however long it takes. And I love that because the client is front and center. They're my focus, and I'm going to do whatever's best for them. And so they enjoy that as well.
Yes. And so, Dominique, for anyone listening who's thinking, I really want to do this, I have no idea what to do next, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you would recommend as next steps for any accountant listening right now?
Yeah, great question. And I would say, number 1, identify what it is that you do that adds value and quantify that value. And then you let that value give context to your pricing. How should you set your prices? Well, surprise, surprise, you actually should set your prices based on what kind of profit you want to make, right? How much profit do you want to have at the end of the year? And what's the maximum number of hours you want to work? That should drive your pricing. Not the market rate, not the current hourly billing at the competitor down the street. It should be based on what you want and what helps you create the business that's going to support the life that you really want. And so that's the second step, is set pricing according to what's going to work best for you.
And the third step?
And the third step, I'd say, is you have to have a way to communicate about that, and that might take collaboration. Go on the message boards, join a group of people that can have this conversation together to really talk about how do you communicate that to clients in a way that gets them really excited about paying 5, 10, 20 times what they're used to paying. But you can do it, and you can have them very excited about it. And it's all because of how you communicate that value you bring.
Yep. So just to recap everything that the most amazing Dominique Molina has been sharing, really focusing on what kinds of results are you creating for your clients? Are you going to be improving their take-home pay, cutting their budgets, decreasing expenses, increasing profits, like you just said? The value pricing is about capturing a piece of that value, and also thinking about what you were saying earlier, what is the maximum amount the client will pay? Right? And having that in mind and having it all relate about the results that you're going to provide to your clients and what are those outcomes that you're going to provide. And I love every little bit of that. And, there's this really great quote that I know about pricing, and it's from the CEO of ProfitWell, and it's, pricing is the exchange rate you put on all the tangible and intangible aspects of your business. It's the value for cash. And that guy's name is Patrick. And I think it just ties in so nicely here. So thank you so much, Dominique, for joining us here today on the Abundant Accountant Podcast. It was an honor to have you.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you all so much for joining Dominique and I on the Abundant Accountant Podcast. It is always an honor to be here with you and talking with Dominique about value pricing and how that's really changed her whole life, not only in her firm, but for her personally and for her clients, and providing the top-notch service that she delivers can also make a difference from you. Also, I would love to hear from you. If you have personally benefited from listening to the Abundant Accountant Podcast, please send me an email with your story to hello@thepitchqueen.com. Once again, it's hello@thepitchqueen.com. I would love to see your stories, and I will share them to others right here on the Abundant Accountant Podcast in future episodes. Also, if you have a quick second, please do leave me a rating and review on iTunes and subscribe to the show. I do always love hearing from you. Thanks again for listening, and have a wonderful day.